Hi everyone, just a few thoughts here on setup. So important to remember here that you don't have to conform to every one of these points, but it's just a good idea to have an understanding of what they do in the golf swing. So if we start from the ground up, so the first thing is you want to have the feet turned outwards between 20 and 30 degrees, say, and if I illustrate that with a line, it's the fact that they are toes out like this, Charlie Chaplin, Donald Duck style, whatever you wish to call it. And this is important because it will enable the hips to turn more during the golf swing. And when you think of the knee joint only flexes and extends. There's no rotation value to it. So very often when you see golfers start with their feet perpendicular to the target line, for example, you'll see that their left foot raises and slides across in the free swing. And that's simply because it has to. Obviously that's not a very stable move. And it's important at setup that as our feet are the sole point of contact we have with the ground, notice the pun there, is that you do put pressure against the ground. You do have a certain platform from which to create power. Okay, so the feet turned outside to the outside, and then the same with the knees. So you want the knees to be turned slightly out equally. So not quite as much as the toes, but still to the outside. So very often you see golfers pinching the right knee, for example, which does often lead to the upper centre, to the head tilting backwards, falling away from the target during the downswing, with all the consequences that has, shifting the path out to the right, hitting the ground too soon, etc. Okay, then important that the golfer flexes the knees forward. So a good reference point is to have the knees flexed over the middle of the shoes, and this again is going to enable the golfer to put or feel pressure against the ground. Then in order to counteract that and not to feel like the balance point is lost, the posterior needs to be moved backwards. So that's the fact that the posterior here would be behind the heels, and this automatically points the hips downwards towards the ground. So you see the hips moving downwards, so the hips are flexed forwards. Now it's very important that the hips in the setup position are slightly forwards of centre, so I'd say 2 to 3 centimetres forwards, so about an inch forwards. And what I mean by that is when you look at the hips here from face on, you'll see that they are slightly forwards of centre, not by much at all, but very so slightly forwards. So that's probably putting the mass of golf, say 55, 45 on the left hand side. The head, on the other hand, stays really quite central to the stance. So it almost looks like a tripod with the hips just a tiny bit further forwards. Then it's important that the chest is flexed forwards also, so like the hips, the chest is in forward flexion towards the ground, and you'll notice that he doesn't have a completely straight back, especially when you start talking about the thoracic area, upper spine, cervicals, the neck. You can see that they're tilted more forwards than the lower part, and this enables the golfer to keep their central vision on the ball, so he doesn't have to peer down from the bottom of his eye sockets to see the ball. So he's looking at it for his central vision. We want the golfer to be relatively square, so that means that the shoulders are parallel to the target line. You'd expect the same with the hips, the knees, the toes, or the heels rather I should say, would be a more accurate representation depending on how far outwards the toes are turned out. And from there you want the arms to be turned inwards slightly, with the arms relatively straight, and you should definitely feel a certain pinching on your upper rib cage in this sort of area where your arms are on top of your rib cage, so don't let the elbows fall behind. Then we want the hands from the face on view to be just inside the left thigh, so like so that's the fact that the handle is leaning ever so slightly forwards, and notice that from down the line it's pointing roughly to the belt line. So that's a good starting point. Raise it slightly, it may favour the draw type player, and lower it slightly, it might favour the fade type of player. But it's a good starting point. And don't forget, when you set up, don't be all floppy, don't be all relaxed and loose, you are about to make a golf swing, which is quite a forceful thing. So you do need to be able to remain stable and in balance throughout the entire thing. Anyway, these are just a few key points. Again, remember some are much more important than others. So for example, having the weight slightly forwards, much more important than having your left toe out 25 degrees rather than 15 or something like that. Make sure it's compatible with what you're doing in your swing and the ball flight you desire. Any questions, please let me know. Thanks, bye.